Hi everyone, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to create a Windows 10 bootable USB. And first off, we're going to start by downloading the Windows 10 Media Creation Tool, which we'll be using to create an ISO file, which we will then write to the USB. So I'm going to open my browser. Okay, so now we're going to search up Windows 10 Media Creation Tool and press enter. So the first link is usually directly from Microsoft. It'll say download Windows 10 disk image, as you guys can see. So it says disk image, but it's actually going to take us directly to the Media Creation Tool. So over here there's an update now and a download tool now button. So the update now is actually just if you already have Windows 10 and you want to update to the latest major update of Windows 10, then you could use their update assistant, which is what will download if you press update now. But what we're looking for to create the USBs is this one, the Windows 10 installation media or media creation tool. So we're gonna press download now. I'm gonna download it. As you guys see, it's saved, and it's right over here. Saved right here, so you guys can see it. So next off, we're gonna get Rufus, which is what we're gonna use to write the ISO files to the USBs. So the first link is directly from them, so that's the link you want to use. You don't want to use any third-party downloads, as they could contain malware, bloatware, adware, and etc. So you press on the first one. This is the latest version, 3.17, and there we go. It's installed now. Yeah. So as you can see, it's over here. So I'm just gonna close this. Okay, so now I'm gonna start the media creation tool. So as you guys can see, it's getting a few things ready. So it's gonna take maybe like a minute or two on this. Okay, so I recommend for new users of Windows or anyone who hasn't actually read the license or doesn't know much about the Windows license or anything, you guys should probably go and read through the whole thing and then press accept or decline depending on which one suits you. In the case of decline, you're not gonna install Windows. In case of accept, you will. It will take you on to the next step. So this is just analyzing my PC's specifications and to see which Windows operating systems like Times 64 and Windows 10 English and so on, which of those that belong to this PC. It's just analyzing that stuff right now. Okay. So over here we could choose to upgrade the PC or create an installation media, USB drive, DVD or ISO file. So in the case of upgrading PCs, that's in case you're in like a lower version of Windows. But in this case we want to create an installation media, so that's why I press on. Okay, so here use the recommended options for this PC is basically, like I said before, it was analyzing my PC specs and it gave the recommended specs for that. But in the case you have a 32-bit PC, or if you want an installation media for both kinds, 32 and 64-bit, You could change that in architecture. In the case of languages, there are many different languages which you can change them to. So you can do it according to your preferences. So I'm going to use the recommended options for my PC because I'm doing a 64-bit Windows 10 installation. So next. We could use USB flash drive, but in the case of ISO files, I found them much more easier as not only are they stored to your PC, but in the method where you write them to the USB, they're generally more easily seen by the operating system or PCs or BIOS and etc. Okay, so now this is just gonna download Windows 10. So depending on your internet speed, it can go from a few minutes all the way up to like an hour or two. So I'm just gonna let it run, and I'll skip over to the certain amount. Okay, so now I've skipped over to where it's at 98% of completing the downloading of the Windows 10 files, which will be required to create the tool, which will then create the Windows 10 ISO file. So it's almost complete, 99%. After downloading, it will go to the verifying stage, and what they do to the verifying stage to make sure that all the Windows 10 files are downloaded and there's no corrupt files or missing files. So in the case of creating your ISO, there's no errors, and during an actual installation using the ISO, there would be no errors. So as I said, it's verifying now. This step is usually much faster than the previous downloading and then the secondary installing step or creating step. So this generally passes by pretty quickly. Okay, so now it's in the creating Windows 10 media step. So this is where it actually creates the ISO file. So this is much faster than the download one because the download one's more dependent on the Wi-Fi and my internet speed's not too fast. So in the case of creating the Windows 10 media, it'll be much faster. It won't take us much time, but I'm still gonna go skip through all the way to when it actually reaches around 199 or 100%. So it doesn't take much of your time, so you guys can get a better understanding of this. Okay, so now it's about done, almost creating the Windows 10 media. And yeah, so as you guys can see, it's saved on my desktop as Windows ISO. And now I'm just gonna click on finish, and then okay, so another thing I want to mention is that this ISO file can be also used to be burnt to a DVD and run the Windows 10 installation off a DVD. But in this case, we're going to be using Rufus to run the Windows 10, to write the Windows 10 installation ISO to the USB that we have plugged into our computer. Okay, so now I'm gonna first delete the partition, or I guess you can say, for people who don't know what a partition is, a partition is like a sector or portion of the USB. In the case of the USB we're using, it only has one partition, so like the complete USB is technically one part. So I'm going to be formatting it using the disk management utility within Windows. But I'd actually recommend, in the case of people who actually would prefer a more advanced formatting or partitioning utility, to use Mini Partition Wizard. So that's actually a really good tool. So in this case, as you can see, that's the USB, and I'm gonna format now. You could also delete it, and if you were to delete it, then you can create a new volume. In this case, that's like removing the complete the data on that USB completely, and then creating a new partition. You can create 2 or 3, but as it is right now, you'll have to use a Mini Partition Wizard if you want to create 2 or 3 without deleting the partition. So here I'm formatting it, and I also gave the name Windows 10. In this case, in this formatting, the file format, it doesn't exactly matter, because you can do FAT32, you can do NTFS. It doesn't matter, as Rufus generally reformats it anyways using multiple different kinds of file formats, file systems. And in this case, for Windows, it's generally used as FAT32. As you guys can see, the Windows 10 USB, which we named as Windows 10, is plugged in here, and there's the Windows ISO file, which is on my desktop. So I'm gonna use this. So as you guys can see, by default, Rufus was able to change all the values in there to make it appropriate for Windows 10 installation. So I changed the name for the volume to be Windows 10, so once it's written, the name of this volume will be called Windows 10. So the Windows 10 standard Windows installation, that's the image option. So this is for a regular Windows 10 installation. Okay, so the partition scheme, GPT. So GPT and MBR, those are two kinds of partition schemes that are used nowadays. MBR is mainly an older partition scheme which is used in the past, and it has a limited number of partitions that you can create in it. In the case of GPT, it's unlimited, and as you guys can see, the target system is UEFI, the file system is FAT32, which is a general USB file system for any USB that's low storage. In the case of some that are like 64 GB and beyond, those generally use the exFAT. Cluster size, that's not something we have to worry about, because Rufus generally finds the proper default one for that. So as you guys can see, Rufus will start off by deleting the partitions like I mentioned before. We did do this manually, but that was to make sure that when Rufus is running through it, there's almost zero chance of any errors occurring while Rufus is deleting the partitions. And now he's creating the file system, and what Rufus is now going to do is copy the ISO files. Just ignore the Google Drive stuff, that's just the Google Drive pop-up. And in the case of this, the largest file probably within this ISO would be install.esd, which is probably the largest file within this ISO, and it's the main installation media. So I'm just gonna let this run, and skip over to near the end of this. Okay, so if you guys running, you guys probably noticed by now that ESD, install ESD was probably the largest and largest file there, and probably Rufus spent most of its time copying that file. So now that Rufus is done, I'm gonna close Rufus, and I'll show you the USB now. So there we go, down there, this PC. Yeah, so you guys can see we labeled it Windows 10, and this is the USB, and the ISO file is properly copied to it by Rufus. So this is now a bootable USB, which you guys can use to install Windows 10 onto like any Windows 10 compatible PC. So yeah. Okay, so another thing you should remember is, instead of pulling your USB out, any kind of storage device which you connect through USB, you should first eject it. So here you can see the Windows 10 USB. So now after you get this notification, you can remove the USB from your PC, as this would make sure that any files or any software running on the USB or running using the USB would close itself, or the files would complete saving, or any processes would complete before the USB is removed, so no data is lost and no damage is done to anything. So now you guys can remove the USB, and you're set. Now that's the USB installation media, and you guys can check in my next video. I'll be showing you guys how to install Windows 10 onto a PC using the installation media we created right now.
Thank you.